It's important to remember, the surfboard is not part of the body. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about the 37th entry in the MCU, Marvel's 2025 sci-fi superhero film, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content like reviews, rank lists, and recommendations. All my reviews include a breakdown of the pros and cons, my rating, and even some tailored film recommendations, so be sure to watch through to the end of this video for all of that extra content. The Fantastic Four: First Steps stars Pedro, Pascal, Vanessa, Kirby, Joseph Quinn, and Ebon Moss-Bachrach, and was directed by Shakman. Set 4 years after the establishment of the Fantastic Four, it follows the team as they attempt to protect the world and their family from the world-devouring cosmic entity, Gatiss. Comic book movie fans sure are having a good couple of weeks here, and MCU fans are having a great and reassuring summer. Things had previously been a bit rough lately for each of those groups. I mean, even the most ardent superhero fans can succumb to oversaturation-induced fatigue. Sameness inevitably leads to desensitization, so things that were once exciting eventually feel like everyday occurrences. Franchises, and even genres, can get trapped in a funk as a result, churning out more of what people once loved, only to no longer get the same response. In these cases, we need something new, or very good, to break away from the mundane and rejuvenate things. As I alluded to earlier, the MCU started on this rebounding path in May with Thunderbolts, but with this 37th entry in the franchise, we're met with something that actually feels new. Of course, in some ways, it feels a little silly to be calling this new. The Fantastic Four is a team that even non-comic book readers are fairly familiar with, thanks to multiple films over the last few decades, none of which have been very good. I'll admit that I've got a nostalgic soft spot for the 2005 film, but there's no mistaking it for a good movie. But with the Fantastic Four's official introduction into the MCU, we've finally got a good, should I say it? Alright, Fantastic Four movie. This is a movie that was a very long time coming. Much like with the X-Men, rights issues prevented previous inclusion of the Fantastic Four in the MCU. With Disney's acquisition of 20th Century Fox in 2019, fans have been beside themselves, clamoring for a film and dreaming up fan casting. There was a good deal of debate and emotion in online circles when the official cast was announced, but to be honest, I didn't really have any thoughts on the matter at the time. However, that's certainly changed since watching. I've got strong thoughts on this casting, and it's all positive. Like many of the best MCU movies, this is a very character-driven film, so we really need to be able to latch onto and care about these protagonists. We really need to feel like they're not only representative of the characters, but also that they work well as a unit and have the chemistry necessary to feel like a family. And boy, do they ever. Vanessa Kirby is the standout here as Sue Storm, aka the Invisible Woman, but I was extremely impressed with the spot-on casting and performances of all four leads. The film takes its time to give each character some moments to really showcase their personality and what makes them them. These moments may occasionally feel like asides from the main plot, but they really help to characterize the team members and make them feel like fully realized people. They may be superheroes, but they're still relatable with family interactions, doubts, hopes, and choices. I know we've had some experience with past iterations of these characters, but I was struck by how immediately lived in and real this world and these characters felt. These are new to us, new to the MCU characters, and yet I felt like I already knew them, fully believed in their chemistry, cared about them, less than 30 minutes into the movie. So we've got our heroes, but what about the antagonistic side of things? There are some fun nods, references, and even minor inclusions of some classic Fantastic Four villains who've never before graced the big screen, but the big baddie here is Gatiss. I think most of us can agree that more often than not, MCU villains can be a little underwhelming. There are obviously some exceptions, like Thanos, but the villains are often among the weakest elements of these films. I've never been a very big fan of grand cosmic threats in comic book movies, so the idea of a massive, ancient, planet-devouring entity was not one that particularly intrigued me. And although this movie does feature a giant CGI villain with minimal motivation, he mostly worked for me. After all, how much characterization do you really need for a cosmic entity who devours planets for sustenance? His design was imposing, and he was certainly a formidable threat who repeatedly had the Fantastic Four scrambling to revise their failed plans. So Galactus was better than expected for me, but where the villain side of things shined, often quite literally, was with the Silver Surfer. Like Galactus, I had comparatively minimal experience with this character. Basically, only Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, which I definitely don't hold nostalgia for like I do the first movie. That previous iteration of the character never did anything for me, but I really liked her here. She's also a formidable foe, with a cool design and some nice action scenes, but has some real characterization and an actual character arc. She doesn't just amount to a sad backstory, but has some real humanization that made her compelling, even though she'd only periodically pop up in the story. I was so enamored with the casting and characters that I almost forgot to talk about arguably my favorite aspect of this film, the setting. This story is set in a previously unseen universe, known as Earth 828. This is a universe in which the Fantastic Four are, to our knowledge at least, the only superheroes. This is unique for the MCU to begin with, but what makes it even more so is the fact that this film takes place in an alternate retro-futuristic 1960s. We've previously had two period piece MCU films, Captain America the First Avenger and Captain Marvel, both taking place in the sacred timeline of Earth 616. This film has the feel of a 60s period piece. The music, both the soundtrack and Michael Giacchino's excellent score, the costumes and production design, the space-age fascination with technology, but it has the additional creativity imbued by retrofuturism, taking the 60s dreamed expectations of what the future's technological advancements would hold and making them a reality in that 60s world. Sleek cars with the capability of flight exist in the same world where space transmissions are still physically etched onto records. Lightspeed space travel and teleportation technology exist in a world where beehive hairdos are still in style, and kids watch Saturday morning cartoons on CRT TVs. Sentient helper robots baby-proof houses and walk dogs along recognizably 60s streets of the Lower East Side and Times Square. It's a wonderful blend that not only stylistically appeals to me on a personal level, but also just feels like the proper way to represent the advanced for the time sci-fi elements of this 60s debuting comic book. This retro-futuristic setting is a big contributing factor to the film's distinctive feel, but it's important to note that it's not the only contributing factor. It's been a long time since I watched an MCU film that felt like it had its own unique identity. This is largely intentional as a brand recognition measure, but there is absolutely a broad overarching stylistic sameness to the films of the MCU. Some people love this style, others absolutely loathe it, but its existence certainly imparts a very similar quality to the movies. We're 37 films into this franchise now, so there are obviously some exceptions, largely due to some genre experimentation. The political thriller of The Winter Soldier, or the horror of Multiverse of Madness, for instance. But despite their slight deviation from the playbook, those movies still all feel like part of the MCU, connected stylistically and story-wise. The MCU is a franchise that's always been geared towards expansion and interconnectedness. Nowadays, every new MCU release relies upon lore and information established in past films and shows. This is fine if you're a fan who stayed on top of the continual stream of releases each year, but it's a lot of homework and a big time investment for the average person who hasn't. Each movie also ties directly into upcoming releases, often across the multiverse, focusing on setting up for future movies as much as or more than telling its own story. The Fantastic Four's Earth 828 setting allows it to be a refreshingly standalone tale. We obviously know that the Fantastic Four will appear in the upcoming set of Avengers movies, and will inevitably retroactively learn that the events that take place in First Steps have wider-reaching impacts, but for right now, this movie functions and really works as a standalone film, which is all the more impressive considering it skips the expected and familiar origin story approach, in much the same way as DC's most recent contribution to the comic book movie catalog. Who knows what the future of the MCU holds, but for the first time since Avengers Infinity War, I'm actually genuinely looking forward to finding out. And that is a fantastic feeling. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pro number one has got to be the characters. I have to say that I was really impressed with all aspects of this. The characterization, the casting, the performances, each of the actors really felt like they embodied their character, and the script gave us enough downtime with the team members to not only get a sense of who each person is, but also grow to care about them very quickly. The protagonists are definitely the highlight here, but I also have to mention the Silver Surfer, whose character arc and compelling characterization really surprised me. Pro number 2 is the retrofuturist setting. This film takes place on the previously unseen Earth 828 in a retrofuturist 1960s. Basically, that means it has all the hallmarks of a 60s period piece. The clothes, the production design, the music, but it's combined with a sleek sci-fi technological edge inspired by what the 60s vision of the future actually was. I love this unique combination of space-age styles and ideas, but it's made all the better by the fact that it incorporates ideas from, and is just generally in line with, the actual 60s origins of the Fantastic Four comics. The third pro is the film's unique identity. Even as a fan of the MCU, I can recognize and admit that many, if not most of the films, have a very similar stylistic quality to one another. Fantastic Four still has an occasional MCUism, but generally feels very unique. This is definitely aided by the retrofuturist setting I talked about in the previous pro, but it goes beyond that. This is a character introduction movie that jumps over the typical origin story structure, instead diving right into an in-progress world and story. And unlike the majority of MCU films, this movie tells purely its own story, neither setting up for a specific future film nor relying on information or lore from past MCU movies. Instead, it's able to function very well as a standalone movie. On the con side, my only issues are just very minor nitpicks. I think there's some minor pacing issues, primarily during the second act, as well as the lead up to Galactus' arrival. Certain aspects of the plot felt a bit lightweight at times, which I honestly didn't really mind, but did contribute to a slightly more formulaic third act. On a more subjective note, I've never been a huge fan of the grander scale cosmic comic book movie storylines, so Galactus wasn't the most interesting villain to me. That said, I do think he was well realized here for what he is, so I think many people will like him more than I do. Before I give you my rating and recommendations, I want to remind you that if you're interested in buying the Fantastic Four, First Steps, or any of the other films I mentioned today, I do have affiliate links for all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy in one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you'd use them, if you're in the market for any of these movies or anything else. I'm gonna give the Fantastic Four First Steps 4 out of 5 paws, though I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually increased another half paw on rewatch. We finally have not just a good Fantastic Four movie, but a great one. As one of the few MCU movies with a genuinely unique look and feel, this story of family, unity, and communal resilience is bolstered by a fantastic 60s retrofuturistic setting, a driving and boisterous score, and immaculate casting that helps to make these new to the MCU characters feel like old friends we've been watching and caring about for years. I would recommend the Fantastic Four First Steps to anybody looking for a really solid superhero movie. I think existing Fantastic Four fans will be extremely happy to finally see their favorite superhero family get the movie they deserve, but even casual fans and newcomers should be pleased with the relatable story and characters. MCU fans will also generally be happy here, but if you're somebody who's been feeling a bit burnt out or fatigued after 36 other MCU movies, you might still want to give this one a shot. It feels quite different from the typical MCU film, with its own unique style and vision. Plus, it functions as an entirely standalone movie. No time wasted on setting up for future movies, and no need to watch any past films or shows to understand what's happening. If you liked the Fantastic Four First Steps, I would recommend The Incredibles. This animated Pixar film is another movie about a superhero family, including some characters with similar powers. With its fun action, family-driven heart, and retrofuturistic 60s setting, plus another Michael Giacchino score, this is one of Pixar's best. If you'd rather stay within the MCU, you should watch Captain America: The First Avenger. As Captain America's introduction into the MCU during Phase 1, this film functions more like a traditional origin story, but its standalone period film setting and character-centric heart and emotion make it feel more in line with the Fantastic Four than most other MCU films do. And if you like the idea of a retrofuturistic superhero story, you might want to check out The Rocketeer. This early 90s superhero movie, based on the comic book character of the same name, feels a bit like an alternate Iron Man story, set in a retrofuturistic 1930s and following a stunt pilot who finds a rocket pack and uses it to fight Nazis. Alright, a couple questions for you guys. Number 1, have you seen the Fantastic Four First Steps? If so, what'd you think of it? And number 2, what's your favorite movie with a retro-futuristic setting? Be sure to leave your answers in the comments below so we can get a discussion going. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this review, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more videos like this. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.